today we are going to be talking about the Yupiq peoples, and the subtitle for the presentation is Ecology and Spirit, and that actually comes from the Oscar Coagli reading that you did, the quote, A Pathway to Ecology and Spirit, and it's also a good way of framing what we're going to be talking about today, because we're going to be talking a lot about Yupiq relationships to the land, and also Yupiq spirituality and how those are intertwined. So here we go. First of all, Kiana Tailuki, which means thank you for coming. In this case, thank you for coming to class. And I hope that we can get some exposure to Yupiq language as we go through this, although I'm not terribly proficient at it, but I hope to share at least a little bit of it. It's an amazing language and also an amazing culture. Speaking of an amazing culture, this is going to be kind of an interesting way to start this discussion, maybe, or maybe you find it boring, I don't know, but you may or may not know that long before sunglasses became available widely and commercially produced in the United States in the 1920s, long before that, you had, among both Yupiaq and Yupiq peoples, essentially sunglasses that had existed for centuries previously. And so these two are from, I think this lower one is Yupiq sunglasses made from hide, as well as beach grass, as well as some glass beads, and I think it's from like 1912. And then this one is from, I think, the 1890s. And then this is an Yupiaq one made out of like a whalebone, basically. And how these work is that they have very small slits, which works to focus. So if you're in like a very icy or snowy environment, there's a lot of sunlight coming at you at any given moment, and that can cause damage to your cornea. And so this works to focus the light so that you can see better if you have vision problems. And then it also serves to block out some of the sun. Now, I don't strongly recommend this, that you, at least that's how I understand it. So I don't recommend that you like go home and try to build one of these. Might end up hurting your eyes quite a bit if you do it the wrong way, but it's interesting that this was being done using whalebone, using grass, using different animal hides long before kind of sunglasses in their modern form had been invented. So one could argue that the Yupiq people and the Yupiaq people were actually the inventors of the original sunglasses, and also just the inventors in general of sort of a form of glasses, which is really, really cool, I think. All right, well, when we're talking about Yupiq people, we're talking about a group of people that traditionally were subsumed, traditionally meaning in early American discourse, used to be known by the name Eskimo, which we now understand is really not a preferred term in most contexts. And instead we understand them by their own autonym, their own name for themselves, which is Yupiq. And Yupiq means the real people. And there's actually different designations as well, such as Cupig, which is in one of the 5 Yupiq dialects. Cupig is the way to identify Yupiq people, and so we use that sometimes to identify specifically the people that speak that dialect. But we'll kind of speak more just generally of this group of people as the Yupiq peoples. Okay. Now, you did a reading by Hamilton, who is herself Yupiq, and it was called The Yupiq and the Yupiq People. And I wanted to draw out a few points from that reading that I thought were particularly important. First of which is just to situate yourself. Again, this is this whole kind of central western part of Alaska. It's the YK Delta, primarily the Yupiq-Kuskokwim Delta. And within that delta, you have about 60 villages of people, and you have about 21,000 Yupiq people, which makes the Yupiq the largest Alaska Native group, arguably. The only group that's potentially that large would be Yupiaq. And when I say they're the largest, what I mean by that is the largest that we kind of identify as a single culture. I'm not saying if we were to kind of add together all the different Athabascan peoples, at which point you would have a very large number, but I'm saying kind of a group of people that we identify as one culture, Yupiq, that is 21,000 people, which is very, very large, especially by the standards of Alaska population size. That's very, very large. So these villages cover the YK Delta. The largest, kind of the hub in the area, is the city of Bethel, which is only about 6,500 people, which gives you kind of a sense of how small things are in general as far as the villages and cities out in this part of Alaska if you've never been there. And it's primarily tundra environment, which is generally speaking lower, smaller vegetation, fewer trees, colder in general, more permafrost, more kind of grassy vegetation that's frozen for significant portions of the year. And you look at that, and if you're not used to tundra, if you didn't grow up in tundra, you look at that as a barren wasteland potentially, as Hamilton points out. But as she also points out, you really shouldn't. If you grew up in the tundra, if you're a Yupiaq person that grew up in the tundra, it's actually abundantly full of resources. So she talks about, for example, all the berries and fish and marine mammals and vegetables, lots and lots of food resources you can make use of. Also, there are things like moss that can be used for cleaning, right? And we just look at moss potentially sometimes, if you're not used to the tundra, as this kind of random planty sort of thing that grows on trees or on the ground, but moss can be used for cleaning and scrubbing. The grass in that area can be used for weaving. The sod was used traditionally for sod houses, so even the soil, right, was useful. So many of these resources were turned to good use. And so it wasn't a barren land, but you have to reframe how you understand the land to see the kind of resources that there really are in it. And so she calls that centuries-old knowledge. And I'll use a term later in the lecture, which is traditional ecological knowledge, to describe that ability to understand a landscape deeply that comes with living in an area for a very long time, and especially comes with groups of people that have lived in the same landscape for centuries of time. Now let's talk a little bit about Yupiaq language. So the language Yupiaq, and you'll sometimes see it Yupiaq spelled, it has about 10,000 speakers, and has had about 10,000 speakers for at least a decade or two, by which I mean it's staying relatively constant, which is very good because that, if our point of view is native language preservation, because that means that it's not rapidly declining. Not only that, but for about a quarter, 17 out of 68 of the villages, children are still raised speaking Yupiaq as their first language, at least at the time of this writing, which is really pretty impressive and incredible, as far as that makes it it facilitates there being such a large number of speakers if you have a significant number of villages where people are learning that as their first language. When people learn languages when they're very young, their brains are still extremely plastic, they're extremely flexible, and we can learn languages sometimes faster and better as children, just being immersed in it. So this bodes well for the native language of Yupiaq, and it is one of the largest spoken native languages in Alaska. Now, the name for Yupiaq people in their language is Yupiaq, and it comes from the word yuk, which means person, and pik, which means real. So put those together, Yupiaq, and you have the real people. And again, we've talked about that Yupiaq and Yupiaq are the same word, essentially just in different dialects of Yupiaq, and we sometimes use those to refer to people that belong to / speak those specific dialects, come from those specific areas within Yupiaq territory. Athabascan groups in the area typically have a name for Yupiaq groups, an exonym, a name from another culture, which roughly translates to the coastal people. So the groups around them refer to them as the coastal people. They refer to themselves as the real people, which is a really common way that native languages define themselves. The terms very often mean the people, or the authentic people, or the real people. Now, the Yupiaq language is amazing and incredible, and I want to talk more about that, but I need to pause the video because this video is getting long enough that I'd like to cut it right here.